story is something that I think about from time to time and it creeps me out. So I'm writing this to get it off my chest. So anyways, let's begin. Almost 3 years ago, I was 17 years old, and at this point I was accustomed to being in horrible situations, as all I had was my mother, and she could not hold down a job for long because she had her own issues to tackle. And so as I grew up, we stayed in and out of roommates' houses. We never really had our own place to stay except twice, but that didn't last long either, and we would be forced into a new environment with a snap of a finger. So when I was 17, we are led into a situation where we are going to be homeless again, and I was used to it at this point, as I had slept in the street more than I'd like. The day comes when we have to leave our roommate's house, and my mom is able to stay at her boyfriend's trailer. I had nowhere to go as I had no friends at this point, as I halted my friendships because they were bad for my health and mental state, and overall were toxic. My mom offered me to go with her, but I didn't want to, as I felt like getting between my mom and her boyfriend was kind of weird. Plus, I'm used to the street and I didn't think it was as bad as it was at the time. So here we are. I get dropped off at a McDonald's and I eat some burgers before I go off into the streets once more. Eventually the sun fled and darkness was all that remained, and so I looked for a place to sleep for the night. I went into many places that night trying to sleep, but none of them were working because it was either too hot, or the lights were too bright, or the mosquitoes were biting me. That's when I remember a house that I used to go into to chill in. This house was under construction and nearly finished, so the doors all shut and the windows were all settled so there were no mosquitoes. I go through the back like always and I make my way upstairs. Eventually I settle in the bathroom because there is less debris on the floor. So I lay there and I try to sleep. Eventually I hear some sounds downstairs, but I didn't think anything of it. I figured it was the door that I came through swinging open and close or something. Eventually, after laying there for maybe an hour, I open up my phone and I look at old photos of my life, thinking about how messed up it was that I got to this point and how I lost everything. The noises were still happening this entire time, but I paid no mind to it. Eventually, for whatever reason, I get up and I go to sit down on the back porch because I just couldn't sleep. I make my way downstairs and out the back door to the porch. I'm messing around on my phone for maybe 5 minutes when it happens. I see movement to my left from the back door I just exited from. At first I think that it's an illusion, but I was wrong. I see a man shrouded in darkness, peering past the wall inside to gaze at me. The lower half of his figure was behind the wall entirely, and I could not see anything but his upper body. The rest of his body is leaning to the left, peeking behind this wall, almost like the man was trying not to let me see his full body, as it would make his presence known. The man was a pure black silhouette, and I could not make out any features. After noticing him, I just sat there and stared at him for what seemed like forever, but was probably a minute or two. I expected him to come outside and talk to me because I normally talk to a lot of homeless people and I thought the man was just homeless. He didn't come outside though. He had not moved at all, actually. He was as still as a statue, quiet as a mouse. Maybe if I had not noticed him, he would have stared at me the entire time. I eventually, after staring at him, got up and got my bicycle and made my way out of the property. As I'm walking out of the backyard, I peer into the window that is next to the door I saw the man in. The moonlight revealed the man was still there, only now he was watching me walk out of the property. I could tell because the moonlight revealed the top of the man's head, and I saw his left eye gazing at me. He was a white male who was very tall and had a jacket of some kind on. I could not make out many details because he was still cloaked in darkness. After seeing this, I just moved a little faster out of there. I got to the front of the house on the street, and I looked inside to see if I could see him again. I could not. I got on my bicycle and waved goodbye to the house, because I figured the man was still watching me. Then I drove away. For the rest of the night, I could not sleep. I tried 2 different spots, but both were no luck. This is where the story ends. I know I didn't have a crazy chase or fight to the death or anything, but this was real life, and it's not the same as the movies or books. I don't know what the man was doing in there. I assume he was trying to sleep like I was, but the way he was staring at me was very unnerving. It makes me wonder how long the man was in the house for, and what would have happened if I actually fell asleep in the house. Would he have stared at me while I was asleep, completely blinded to his presence? Or did he have other intentions? I will never know, but now I don't go into houses like that anymore after this experience. So to the man shrouded in darkness, let's not meet again. When I was 17, my bedroom had a window looking out at my backyard. The backyard was fenced in, but on the other side of the fence were some woods and a retention pond. I'd never been scared of this, and kept the blinds open so that when the sun rose in the morning, the natural light would help wake me up. One night I was up late on my phone with my dog laying in bed next to me. At around 2 a.m., my dog jumped up and started barking at the window. At first, I thought he was just barking at his reflection and told him to stop, but I then realized he was looking at the left side of the window while his reflection was on the right. I couldn't see outside the window because I had left the lamp on my nightstand on. All I could see in the window was the reflection of my bedroom. Not wanting to alert whatever might be out there that I was scared, I faked a yawn, set my phone aside, and turned off the lamp. I then laid down facing the window, and I swear I saw a set of human eyes looking back at me from the left side of the window. I drink a lot of water at night, so I had an empty bottle on my nightstand. I grabbed it and pretended to just realize it was empty. I turned on the lamp and acted like I was going to get water. I went to my parents' room, and my dad told me not to worry. We had these motion-activated floodlights, and they hadn't turned on, so there was no way anything was out there. I went back to my room and told myself I was just seeing things. I closed the blinds and turned off the lamp and got some sleep. When I woke up in the morning, I went to take my dog out and decided to check out the pine straw bedding underneath my window. It was visibly disturbed. I did my best to ignore that and remember what my dad said about the floodlights. That worked pretty well, until my dad tested the floodlights later that day and found that the bulbs had burned out. To this day, I keep my blinds closed and my lamp off when I sleep. I don't want to risk anything being able to see me, and if anything is somehow peeking through my window, I want to know it's there. If there was someone at my window that night, let's not meet. A few years ago on Quora, I answered the question, have you ever met someone for the first time and got the strongest feeling that the person was bad? Years back, I made a late-night stop at a local Walmart on my way home from a friend's house. It was in a quiet area, not a lot of people out and about at nearly 1 a.m. I've lived around there for years and never run into any truly criminal elements there, so I felt safe going to the store alone as a woman in my early 20s. I made eye contact with a teenage girl the second I walked in the door. She was parked on a bench by the restrooms, hugging a backpack and small purse, checking her phone with a rather desperate expression on her face. When she looked at me, I could tell that she's on the verge of panicking. After a brief second of staring at me, she went back to checking her phone and making phone calls. At the other end of the bench was a white-haired man in jeans and a t-shirt. If I had to guess, he was probably in his late 50s or early 60s. Altogether, nothing appeared off about him. But what struck me was the fact that he never looked up as I passed. Instead, his eyes were absolutely glued to the teenage girl next to him, not in a passive way, but like he was sizing her up for something. She was perched on the edge of the bench, angling herself away from his gaze and leaning away from him. Her body language screamed that she wanted nothing to do with him. Something about him set off warning bells in my head as I went about grabbing the items I had stopped for. I'm normally the type of person that mills about stores aimlessly, making a point to wander each aisle just to see what's for sale. That night, however, I felt a pressing need to get in and out of the store as quick as possible, and something in the back of my head told me to keep an eye on the man on the front bench. I moved my knife from my purse to the front pocket of my jeans where it would be easily accessible. That's how uneasy I felt being in the same building as this man. As I purchased my items, I watched the pair on the front bench. The man had moved halfway across the space between them and was trying to chat with the young woman. She was shaking her head and offering one-word answers, looking like a rabbit about to bolt. As I walked past them again to leave with my purchases, she stopped me and asked if I was headed anywhere close to my old hometown. Apparently, she'd been on her way home from a trip with friends, and they had made a stop to grab drinks and use the restroom. She'd gotten separated from the group, and they left her at the store. The store was about a 30-minute drive from my old hometown, and I knew that to get home, she'd have to walk several hours along unlit stretches of rural highway. The man sitting next to her continued to leer at her but refused to look my way. While I would normally have told the girl that I was headed the opposite direction, something in the back of my head told me not to leave her alone with the man. I agreed to take her home, and she thanked me profusely and offered gas money and a cigarette. I refused both and took her home. The logical part of my brain reasoning that the girl weighed maybe 100 lbs and was a full head shorter than I was. So if it came down to it, I could fight her off. I wasn't stupid either. I texted a few friends to let them know what I was doing, and they were not happy with me. The girl mentioned her address, and I knew exactly where she was talking about. It was an old, quiet neighborhood where I used to play Little League baseball down the street and swim in the pool a few blocks away. During the drive, she told me that she just moved to the area with her mom and younger sisters from a larger city several hours south. She'd taken off with a few of her old friends for the weekend, and her mom hadn't expected her back until the following day, so she'd silenced her phone for the night and hadn't picked up when the girl tried to call. I vaguely remember something about her mom having to work early in the morning, and none of the girl's sisters were old enough to have their own phones. We arrived at our destination, and the girl gave me a handshake and thanked me repeatedly, asking if there was anything she could do to repay me. I told her, "Yeah, do me a favor. Get better friends." Looking back, I have no idea what about the man creeped me out so much, but something about him and the way he was staring at that girl got my hackles up. I had thought in passing that he might have been waiting for someone else in the store, perhaps someone using the nearby restroom, but upon checking out, it struck me that I hadn't seen any other customers there, so he really had no reason to be waiting on that bench. I was still living with my parents at the time, so when I got home, I woke my mom up and told her what happened. She hesitated, and I could see that she didn't like the idea of me giving a stranger a ride home. But in the end, she agreed that something had prompted me to take action, and that I might have saved that young girl from being harassed, or worse.